Hello, everybody. We are here with the legend, Beth Matthews. And Beth is from Buffalo, which is in upstate New York. And she grew a team to 50 people and then one day just decided to blow it up. So today we want to dive into how, one, she grew a team to 50 people, because that's crazy. And then
It's so
what
crazy.
ultimately made her decide to blow it up.
Yeah, what brought her
So let's
here?
dive in. Thanks for being with us, Beth.
I will spend any time I can with the two of you. So happy to be here.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah. How did I grow a team to 50? I had a team under a local brokerage, and I think we had 6 agents at the time. And we were making money and having fun. And then one day the brokerage was bought by a much bigger, more traditional brokerage, and it just didn't feel right anymore. I investigated the options in my market. They were really limited. So even though Buffalo's, I guess, a mid-sized city, we're a little bit of an antiquated area. So we take some time to adapt to new things. And so I was like, I guess there's really nothing like what I had before. So I'll just go do my own thing. And I went independent, and all of those agents followed me. And at the time, one of the members of my team, her and I had become very close personally. She was my top producing agent. She came to me and she said, I want to be a partner. And I was like, okay, we're friends. I like you. We can do that. And hindsight being 2020, I wish I had understood more about the partnership dynamic then than I do now. We really should have outlined more specifically who's going to be responsible for what, et cetera. So essentially, we went independent and we're just doing our own thing, but little by little people started to pay attention and reach out and say, hey, what would it be like to join you? So I was like, we're a broker, but we're structured like a team. And this was before the term teamerage started to get thrown around. So we started bringing some people on. I say it happened very organically, which is good, but that also means it happened very unintentionally.
Mm.
And we were having great success in terms of attracting agents, doing more production. Where we struggled, or where I could have been better, was I started to offer compensation plans that were competitive with the traditional broker model.
Mhm.
And we offered so much support, tools, et cetera, that as we grew, we're like, oh, we'll open another office, more people will come. One day, I just remember looking around and I'm like, all of these people are making so much money. They have no risk. And I have 4 brick and mortar locations that I'm responsible for, all these subscriptions, and I'm making less money and working harder. This model is broken. This does not work. So we went through the process of trying to restructure a few things, but ultimately the resistance to change and just the direction that I needed to take things for myself resulted first and foremost in the dissolution of my partnership. And then human nature is people pick sides and said, I'm going with this person or that person. And over time, I was like, I don't want a big team. I love a one to many aspect. Like I love the coaching and training, but I had become the person that new agents came to be trained, and then they'd get a couple deals under their belt and they'd move on to one of the big discount brokers that offers them a really competitive split. And I just got tired of doing it. I truly tried to completely disassemble Envision Real Estate as an organization and go independent. And I joined a cloud-based brokerage, but I do have some agents that have been with me for a long time. And one in particular who is absolutely not. I love you. I love this brand. I love this organization. I don't care if there's only 2 of us. You are not going to just give it up completely. We'll just do something different with it. And so here we are today.
That's your
I
person.
love that loyalty.
Yeah,
Yeah, me too. It's not easy to come by.
that's
No.
amazing.
I have a question. So
Yep.
when you first got started in real estate, what did your first year look like? What did you do to generate business?
So my very first year, I failed miserably. If we're going back, I
Oh,
was in my early 20s. I was living in a military town. My former husband was active duty in the army. I fell into real estate by accident, like so many people do, because I was like, we built our house and I loved the process. And then I saw the closing statement and I saw what the commission that the agent made. And I was like, wow, I can do that. And I joined a team and I actually had a fair amount of success. I probably wrote 5 contracts a month, which as a 23-year-old
Huge.
is great. So I could
right.
convert leads and I could get people under contract. And then a big broker came to me and said, "Why are you giving your team lead 50% of everything you're making?" And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." And I left, and 6 months later, I was out of the business because I had no idea how to generate my own book of business. None.
And I
Nobody
think
really prepared me for that.
don't you feel like that's common?
Very.
Like,
I was thinking
agents
too.
on teams don't appreciate all the things that they're given because we've had a lot of agents leave our team and they were on track to do 20 to 40 deals a year, and then they leave and they do maybe 3.
Maybe.
I think our most successful agent did 7.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I always say to people, like, I can give you all the guidance, but I'm not doing it from a place of speculation. I did these things. I
Mhm.
understand. And it's also why it's fairly easy, maybe too easy at times for me to say to someone, like, if you don't appreciate what's being offered to you and you think that there's something better out there for you, then okay. There's definitely times that maybe I should have fought a little bit more to keep somebody, but I just have this mentality that I don't want to be held hostage in any aspect of my life. So if somebody's made a decision to leave and they make that decision without having a conversation with me about what they're discontent about and give me the chance to fix it, then I do go, okay, best of luck.
I've actually, while you were talking there, I was just thinking about, I'd be very curious, and probably our listeners would be curious too, because I think a lot of people, when they think team, they think big. So, what would be some recommendations that you would have for someone who's starting out now, looking at building a team? Should they automatically try that larger size or start small? Do you have some ideas or some recommendations you can give people?
Yeah, of course. Don't do what I did. Which I think a lot of times agents, especially when you're more visionary minded, I just have the mentality if I build it, they will come. And when I see the like next shiny new object, I'm like, that's so cool. Of course, everybody will adopt this at a high level because I love to adopt new technology at a high level. So I made some assumptions that everybody was going to operate the way that I did. And that wasn't the case. And truthfully, there's probably some process that I overcomplicated just because I liked the shiny new. So, my advice to somebody who's considering building a team is I think there's so much value in doing it, but you have to do it correctly, meaning don't do it for growth, do it for scale. And that took me a long time to understand what the difference was between the two. And I know the three of us were recently at an event together, and this was a huge talking point. And I've said it, I've been very transparent, especially with some of the agents that have been with me for a long time, when I had to sit them down and say, guys, we've grown, but we haven't scaled. Every extra dollar that I made went back into the business and then some. I made a mistake and now I have to correct it. With that being said, in this day and age, there's so many ways to get leverage without having to have a bunch of technology. More and more of the platforms are integrating, and you can do things really efficiently and effectively without having to have 20 systems.
So you're
Um,
saying to keep your costs down. Is that
yeah,
keep
yeah.
it simple?
I would leverage as much automation first, and I am doing this. I'm leveraging as much automation first before I'm bringing in people, because the people are candidly, it's a higher salary than generally your technology. So I invest in making sure I'm really utilizing the tools and the systems that I have at a high level. And then when I feel like I've reached a point of capacity, I'll bring in additional support in terms of people. The other part is, even though people say I'm a hard ass, I do really love the people that I bring into my organization. And so when you get emotionally tied to somebody, it can be challenging to make business decisions.
Yeah,
Where if it's a technology that's not giving me a return on investment, it's easy enough to click the unsubscribe button.
Right.
that's actually
Who
really
would
that's a
you
great tip.
So I'm curious, as you're growing this team, what would be your advice to someone as their first hire? Do you believe in like the micro team version where you build like your own personal production team first and then organically agents kind of transition roles and become solo agents? Or what would you see that
I
process look
do the micro team model, and that is essentially what I'm rebuilding. So once now that I have all of my systems and tools really buttoned up, we essentially have two options to come into my world. I guess three. The first is to become a team member with me, and generally that's somebody who's going to start as a showing assistant. I have enough of my own personal production, and I intend to stay in production for a while because I think it helps me be a better resource in the coaching space, that I'm in the trenches doing the things. But I think there's all these grandiose ideas when you first get licensed that you're going to come in and out of the gate, you're going to be this rock star. And there's also so much that you have to know and quote unquote perfect to really be a top
Mhm.
producing agent. And you have to know the contracts, and you have to know how to market a property, and you have to know how to develop a personal brand. And I think when you try to do too much too soon, you don't do any of it really well. I like the idea of bringing in a showing assistant and more of an apprentice role. I've even taken it back a step from there and started somebody as an internship doing more of the transaction coordination and operations side, because I
Mhm.
think when they understand all of what's going on in the background, they're even better when they're forward facing with the client, when they're educating them on the process and really articulating what their role is. So whether it starts behind the scenes or as a showing assistant, and then adapting that person and evolving that person into buyer's agent, listing agent, et cetera, first and foremost, I think you have to have enough of your own personal production to create the opportunities for the people that you're bringing into your world. And I don't pay for leads. I never paid for leads until I had my own brokerage, and it was candidly a waste of money. I have probably something I need to unpack someday, but like this whole idea of being held hostage in different areas of my life, like being held hostage to a lead aggregator is scary to me, that I'm like, no, because you become reliant on them and they change their model or change their splits. And they've now dictated the course of my business. And I feel like I'm out of control then.
For sure. If you can generate your own leads, that's always better.
Yeah.
Let's dig deeper on the showing assistant role. So, when you're looking for a showing assistant, like what type of one personality are you looking for? And then two, like where are you finding these people? Where should people look to find?
Yeah. So I actually have a couple of agents in my organization now that I'm considering bringing on as the showing assistant, but I also need to see from them that they want it. And I think that's been something that has been a big learning curve. We've all heard before, we don't necessarily know who's going to be successful. I've had people come in and they interview amazing. And I'm like, this person's going to be a rock star, and then they never do anything. And then I have other people that I'm like, oh, I'm not so sure about this person. So my approach is, first and foremost, I think there's so many licensed agents that once they've attempted to be an individual agent out of the gate, they have a greater appreciation for being with somebody who's going to mentor them and create
Mhm.
opportunities. So I'd actually prefer to find somebody who's already licensed and maybe struggled a bit, because then they come into it from a place of appreciation and gratitude. And in so many career roles in a traditional corporate environment, there's a probationary period. And so I've started to implement that a lot. I've worked with you guys a little bit in terms of your organizations. And Desi, I know we've got somebody who's in a probationary period right now, because it's one thing to interview really well and have an outstanding resume, but until you put somebody in the seat, you don't really know how they're going to perform. And I think just going through, people will go through the MLS and see somebody that maybe hasn't had a great year and extend that offer to them. But candidly, I think social media is so powerful to say, hey, this is who I am, this is how I work, and this is what I'm looking for. If this sounds like you, reach out.
I love that. How do you structure pay to a showing assistant? Do you do a salary plus a bonus? How would you work that out?
So I do a percentage, and I have a little bit different train of thought. I've actually, Ben Kinney has spoke to this, and it's really where I ultimately got the concept from. He explained it to me in a group session that made full sense to me. Where I'm a little different is I will compensate a showing assistant on any buyer that I bring in, even if
Oh,
I've been more involved, because I do truly start to view it as a partnership. And so I think in partnerships, we always want to ultimately find this median level of 50-50. There's times where one person has the ability to contribute more than the other. It's when the pendulum swings too far for too long that it's a conflict. And I do bring them in, and so I look at it as a paid training. So maybe somebody's just getting started. I'll offer them, depending on experience, between 15 and 20% of the commission as a showing agent. And I'm like, I'm literally going to glue you to my hip. You're going to come with me on everything.
Mhm.
And that's the buyer consultation, that's showings, until I'm confident that then they can handle everything on their own at the level that I expect. And because it's been a little bit of a, hey, I compensated you for some transactions that you may or may not have quote unquote been deserving, I think the law of reciprocity, then they want to go out and demonstrate that they can contribute back.
I like that because I have this, maybe it's a false belief system where I'm like, I've got to pay them or else they're not going to show up every day. They won't be available when I need them unless they're on a salary. And if this is your job, you're paid a salary.
Mhm.
And then once you've earned my trust, like this is how I've structured it in the past is okay, I'll give you a base salary. And then once you've earned my trust and I feel like you can handle and help more, then I'll give you a bonus just on the transactions that you've touched.
Mhm.
But I've had one successful hire in this role and they were there for a whole year and she only left because she had a baby.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. I think sometimes offering the salary, you attract people who are just going to accept the salary for as long as they can, and then they'll move on to the next salaried
Mhm.
opportunity. Now, not always, but
Mhm.
we work in an environment where our pay is not guaranteed. And so, if you want to be in this world, you have to have the same experiences, positive and challenging, that I have. And if I want somebody who's going to come in and treat it as a, they're going to understand the ebbs and flows and the highs and lows. And I'm okay saying, and if you aren't interested in this opportunity, I'll continue doing what I'm doing because I know I'm going to have to work my own buyers for a period of time, even if I bring this person in. So it's been a big mindset shift for me because Desi, I've felt very much the same way. I want to have to tell somebody, these are the days, these are the times. And when I've stopped doing that and just said, I am a resource to you and I want to create as many opportunities for you as you want, but you have to show up, it definitely attracts a different caliber person. And I'm finding that there's fewer of them that are readily available, but it's okay. If they're not going to do the work or put forth the effort, then I'd rather retain the revenue for myself.
That's an awesome
For
tip,
sure.
actually. I would the way you put that into perspective, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I love
I
it
think
'cause I'm the
sometimes
same
we've
as
done too
Desi.
much of a disservice, right?
Mhm.
I love the selling sunsets and the $1,000,000 listings. Love them. It is my guilty pleasure. I think it's fantastic that it has brought to light the opportunity of real estate as a career
Mhm.
and not a secondary job. Like I retired from my first thing, or I'm
Mhm.
just looking for a summer gig. There are truly some people out there that are viewing real estate as a career at a younger age.
That's true.
And we've done a disservice by painting the picture of what it actually looks like. By creating this almost apprenticeship through the showing assistant, they get a dose of reality before they go all in.
I want to get your thoughts on this. So, my new avatar that I've been making in my head for a showing partner is because I used to think I need a young person, I need them not to be married, I need them to be a real go getter, like a personable person. So, I've shifted. I met a showing partner a couple weeks ago. He works for an agent in my market, and he's a retired truck driver. He loves it because he loves meeting and interacting with people. He just pays him per transaction. But it's so fulfilling to him because he's just meeting people. So I'm like, maybe who I've been looking for is the wrong avatar. Maybe I need somebody who's retired, maybe grandparent age. This guy is like 67, I think, or something like that.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on finding somebody who's retired from their original career, like maybe a retired teacher, truck driver, or someone who wants to live local but just do it for more fun and enjoyment?
Honestly, I think either model can work. I would put less emphasis when you're creating your avatar on what their lifestyle is and what their character is.
Okay.
Because when you, and we know we're all into the woo. So like when you put so much energy into such a specific avatar, you may be missing out on opportunities that
Mm.
you didn't necessarily recognize. So I think it could be the younger person who's willing to grind and dedicate all their time, or it could be the older person who just does it for fun because they get fulfillment out of it. And it could be anybody in between. So rather than focus more on a lifestyle or a stage of life, I would really dive into the characteristics that you're looking for in this person.
Yeah.
Are they motivated? Do they seek to be of service to the clients? Are
Are
they
they
excited about
available on
learning?
weekends?
Are they available? Yeah. So there's certain things that you need to identify for your avatar,
Mhm.
but I think you can be a little bit broader in terms of where they are in their stage of life. And I'll share this as an example. So my very first assistant that I ever hired, scariest thing you ever do is hire somebody for the first time because you're like, wow,
Mhm.
now it's not just me, somebody else is counting on me.
I
And
remember
I knew
that.
I needed, yeah, I was like, I only need somebody part time to start, and it'll probably move into a full time role, but I don't know when that will be. And I interviewed two candidates, and both were great for different reasons. The one was had a little bit more life experience. She had some children, and she was looking to leave an executive assistant position that was full time. And then the other one was right out of college, super bubbly, motivated, excited, whatnot. And I was really torn because they both had characteristics that could work in the role. So I go to my dad because he's always my like go to when it comes to business stuff. And I said, what do you think? And he said, take the person that's looking to transition from full time to part time. And I was like, really? She's going backwards. Like she's going from, and that was my mentality because I'm such a go high achiever. And he said, no, she's not. She's making a strategic decision that supports her life. And she's doing it based off of experience. And I was like, you're right.
Love that.
So I
Those are
had
the
to adjust
best.
my mindset that this is a person who is making a choice where, and I'm sure the other young lady would have been fantastic, but she never had a job out of college. She could have the
Mhm.
best job in the world and she may not even know it. And that assistant ended up being with me for several years and she was great. And that was exactly it. She gave it her all when she was in the office. And she needed that time to be home and be mom and take kids to different events and whatnot.
I had a similar experience actually with my first hire, and actually she's still with me today, and she started as my assistant, transitioned to a showing partner, and now she's a very active, super successful agent on the team.
Yeah.
And similar, like, she was just looking for a bit of a lifestyle shift from
Hmm.
shift work, right? She wanted a little bit more stability. She did want some flexibility because she had kids, so 30-something mom wanting to be able to pick their kids up from school, that kind of thing, and that worked out really well for me. Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
successful.
I think it's more, do they know why they want the job? And is that in alignment with the job that you're
Exactly.
looking to fill?
So maybe that's an interview question, like, why would you want this job?
Mhm.
What are you looking for? How can you contribute?
Mm.
One of my favorite interview questions recently, as I still talk to agents from the standpoint that maybe they want to join the team, and now I have a marketing group. So maybe you're a more seasoned agent that you don't necessarily need the traditional team structure, but you love how I've already operationalized so many things, and that individual can plug in for a monthly fee and basically just go with everything that I already have set up. And then being in a cloud-based brokerage, there's a rev share model. So there's basically three different buckets that somebody can fit in to come into my world. But one of the questions that I ask the agents that still reach out about potentially coming into proximity is, what are you willing to invest?
Mm.
Are you investing time? Are you investing money? Because again, we talk about real estate and selling houses, but you're starting a business. And especially when you're new, if you haven't generated any commissions yet, like you have to join the board and you have to get your lock boxes and your headshot and you like all of these things. And nobody's really preparing these individuals well for what that looks like. And so when I talk to somebody and they're like, I can't give up my 9 to 5 because that's how I pay my bills. I'm like, completely understand and respect that. I'm not asking anybody to be irresponsible. So are you going to invest the time? Which means you're going to have to be out on the evenings and the weekends and away from your family. And if I don't want to do that either, I'm like, then this probably isn't the right career path for you. You do have to make a choice. And I'm not going to be one to sugarcoat it. Like, I worked real estate and pharmaceutical sales for 16 months until I got to a point where I could leave pharma behind. So that was like phase two of my real estate career when I had a better understanding of what it would take and came back to it. I knew I would have to make an investment, and my investment was time.
I love that. And I like what you said about like you're investing in a business. And I think that's something that a lot of agents don't realize. They
Mhm.
feel like it's just more of a job, but it's actually your own business. And so they don't know how to track their numbers because there's a lot of agents who are just spending, spending, spending tons of money and they're not profitable at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you were shifting from when you finally realized you're like, I'm doing all the production, I'm using my production money to keep the lights on, to keep the office doors open, and then they're just making all this money on my production. Like, how did you recognize that from a numbers standpoint?
So it was the first year that we were going to post a loss. And that was like, oh my gosh. And I know there's all kinds of stats out there. 80% of businesses post a loss, but I was not okay with that. As a small business, posting a loss is a much bigger event than as big business, right? Because big
Mhm.
business has so many investors and banks that you're so big that they can't see you fail. There's no bailout for a small business owner. And so it was this aha that we're posting a loss. The market is shifted. I've made some mistakes in terms of how I've structured this. And I can either have the pain of continuing down this path or the pain of change. And I chose the pain of change. And it took almost 2 years to really unravel what had been built up because I had brick and mortar locations that I had leases on, and it was a very humbling experience to have to go and speak to a landlord and say, "I have time left on this lease, and I need to work with you to get out of the lease, and what can that look like?" But I will say that all of those individuals being business owners were so kind. I think they respected the fact that I took ownership for how my business was shifting and changing,
Mhm.
and everybody worked with me. But it didn't mean that I didn't get that like pit in my stomach. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to go have this conversation.
You have
But
to
I'm a
just
firm
make those
believer
hard
in extreme
conversations.
accountability. Yeah, like this is what's going on in my business. I didn't anticipate it. If I had known it was coming, I would have done things differently, but I'm here today and this is what I need to do. And I would really appreciate if you'd be willing to work with me on this.
It's just ask. If you don't ask, you're never gonna know. It's just
Yeah.
that
Yeah. And anybody that's
initial.
owned a business of any sort
Mhm.
can relate to that feeling. And I think that's when they're like, okay,
Yeah.
we'll figure this out.
So, do you have a number in your mind where you're gonna grow your micro team to? Do you have
No, I don't, and I probably should. I am rather regimented and analytical in so many aspects of my life, and I think in the past it's actually I don't wanna say it hurt me, but it maybe took me down a path that was operating out of expectation. "Oh, I have 10 agents, so next step is to have 20, and I have 1 office, so the next step is to" and at
Mhm.
this stage of my life, I'm able to say, "I know how I want my business to feel." And when I get to a point where my personal production is overwhelming to me, or I'm not offering the level of service that I hold myself to, that's when I know that I have to leverage somebody. And
Mm.
rather than it being a very clearly outlined path, I'm really making it more fluid.
I love that. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I know 2023, 2024 were really hard years
Mhm.
for a lot of agents in the industry. So if you were an agent and you had a really hard 2024 and you're like, I've got to get a paycheck in the next 60 days, what is the one activity that you would tell them to go and do?
Great question.
Circle prospecting. Nobody wants to do it, but it is still like circle prospecting is my bread and butter. It's how I built my business. It's how I sustained my business. Last year, I did a decent amount of production. I still mentally was involved in the unraveling and the redoing, so not the level that I would normally do. And 50% of my transactions were off market.
Mm,
So I'm not going to get the awards and the accolades from my local board of realtors because they're not all recorded, but I have some really happy clients and I made the income. And it also helped my own confidence that I still know how to do this.
I think there might
So
be,
I
sorry to
love it.
interrupt. I was just thinking there might be some agents out there that actually don't know what circle prospecting is.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah,
explain a little bit more?
absolutely. I actually did a training on this earlier today, so it's top of mind and I do enjoy it. And it's actually as the world's evolved and technology's evolved. There's so many pieces that you can plug in. So circle prospecting is identifying off-market opportunities. That's all. Very simply, that's what it is. So there's a lot of platforms out there that you can subscribe to get neighborhood data, owner information, phone number, email. Personally, and I'm not plugging any of them, whatever one works for you, that's the best one to use. But myself, I use Mojo Dialer. So I can pull neighborhood data and I'll circle prospect in one of two ways. The first is when I have a signed buyer client who has very clear idea of where they want to live. So if they know they want to be in a certain area or a certain neighborhood, I will pull all of the owner information for that neighborhood and I will power dial, which is literally where on my screen it's just cycling through phone numbers. So I can be doing other things. And then when somebody answers the phone, my screen lights up and I shift and I go through this very basic script. I say, "Hi, my name is Beth. I'm calling from Envision Real Estate right here in Orchard Park. And the reason for my call is I have a very well qualified private client who would love to live in your neighborhood. I've exhausted all of the opportunities that are currently on market, and I'm committed to finding this client a home. Have you considered selling either now or in the near future?" It's that simple. And people are either like, "I was thinking about it," or "Nope, I'm never leaving." But they're kind and they're appreciative and they respect the fact that I'm going above and beyond for my client. So that's one opportunity, is to leverage your buyer needs to find them an opportunity off market. And a lot of times I'll go into a property and it's not the right property for that particular buyer, and I can transition to a traditional listing appointment that way. The other is after I've sold a home in a neighborhood, very similar. "Hi, my name is Beth. I'm calling from Envision Real Estate here in Orchard Park. The reason for my call is I just sold your neighbor's house down the street. And as a result of my marketing, I got 3 offers on the property. The sellers are thrilled. And I also had to disappoint 2 other people because they didn't get the house. But what that tells me is there's at least 2 other qualified buyers that would love to live in your neighborhood. And I'd love to help them find something. Have you thought about selling now or in the near future?" So my investment into something like Mojo is, I want to say it's less than $200 a month, where if you're spending money with any of the lead aggregators, you're spending a lot more than that. And I think people start to understand like how those work, meaning the public, where now I'm calling in my immediate market. They're recognizing my name. And it's like anything, like once they hear my name, they're like, "Okay, I feel like now I'm seeing your signs everywhere." So it starts to snowball and it starts to snowball pretty quickly.
I love that. Beth, would you be open to sharing those scripts with our
Yeah.
listeners?
Yeah, of course. I'll make sure you guys get them.
So
Thank
if
you.
I wonder if they follow you on Instagram.
Mhm.
What's your Instagram handle?
It's Beth by a billion.
Beth by a billion.
Mhm.
And then do you want them to DM you?
Yeah. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay,
We'll
DM
link
me.
them right to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, and you'll get
Mhm.
them right away. Yeah, I'm happy to share the scripts because the script is just another system. And that's what I've learned about myself through this process is I'm very system driven.
Mhm.
I like things to be efficient, and a script is just part of your sales system. And people are like, "Oh, I don't want to sound scripted." You should, because when you get really proficient at a script, then it sounds more natural and it frees up your brain capacity for the off script things.
Absolutely, and
Which
then you
makes
just
sense
know what
because you're
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say you just naturally you don't have to think about it, you naturally know what you're gonna say, and it
Yep.
feels good for you, it doesn't sound scripted,
Yeah,
right?
and it's why I can have
Mm.
my Mojo dialer going on this screen, and I can be doing something else on this screen until somebody answers, because I don't have to think about what I'm gonna say. I've said it so many times. Although Mojo does have a cool feature now that when somebody answers, you can set it so that your script pops up on the screen. There's so
Oh,
many options out there. You just have to find what works for you. Yeah, I shared on the training earlier that for those of you that like really don't even understand that this thing, like you can talk to people on it, because I think like my kids, all they know how to do is Snapchat and keep their streaks going and they never answer their phone. There's so many other ways you can do this. Like I'm starting to integrate some automations into my process where, for example, in that just sold scripting, I have a ringless voicemail platform that integrates with my CRM. So I can record the same message and just press a button and have it hit 100 households at once. Because most people aren't answering a phone number that they don't recognize.
Right.
So then they just get this voicemail and they're like, "Oh, my phone didn't even ring." And if they're interested, they'll call back or they'll at least like it'll be in the back of their mind. So I do ringless voicemail drop. I'm actually in the process of building this out. Ringless voicemail drop and then a follow-up email that says, "Hey, I tried to reach you by phone. I realized that you may have been unavailable, and I'm recording a Loom," which is just if you don't know Loom, it's a short video, and I'm doing the same script, but I'm doing it like this. So they know that I'm a real person. And with
Mhm.
my buyer client's permission, I'll share a little bit of personal information. Yeah, so my clients are Joe and Susie, and they really want to move to the area because Susie grew up in Orchard Park and she wants her kids to go to Orchard Park schools. And again, it's this personal element. And then I'll also follow up with a live phone call. So I'm touching them 3 times that if there's any consideration about selling, they're going to reach out to me.
Oh,
That's
seriously.
so great.
I'm like, there's just so much juicy information, Beth. I'm just like taking notes. My brain is exploding. I'm so excited to implement some of these things in my business. And I think, honestly, the listeners, like, you need to reach out to Beth, get some of
Yeah.
those scripts. And even if you implement one of these like juicy tidbits, it's going to be amazing.
And do it one at a time.
Yeah,
Don't try
not
to
all
do
at
it all
once.
at once. Yeah,
Yeah.
Because
do it
that's
one at
my
a
brain. I'm like,
Yeah.
all at once.
time. Me too, and that's what got me into trouble in the past.
I know. I think we're all working on our teams and our businesses and just thinking through different, because Desi and I run similar sized teams, but very differently, which I think is really
Yeah.
cool. And then hearing your story has been so enlightening. Thank you for sharing it with us and meeting
Oh,
with
my
us.
pleasure. Anytime.
This has been
Always good.
incredible.